Hello. All right, so hello everybody. This is Manic again. I'm here with Alex from the Awesome Spirit of Wildlife, or TASOW. Now, I'm not sure if we should say TASOW or if we should give it the whole name every time, but
it doesn't. It's either way is good.
Good. Okay, so this whole event has been to raise funds for them. They are a conservation group, an educational group, specifically revolving around a lot of the... Actually, I'll let you discuss it. What is it that you do? What is your intent and purpose, Alex?
So we're a nonprofit 501c3 exotic animal rescue and conservation organization based in Pennsylvania primarily. In other news, we're actually going to be expanding to Chattanooga, Tennessee. But our main purpose is to educate the public on the importance of conservation, but also to help save and rescue and rehabilitate animals that were once people's pets that they can no longer take care of anymore. So, for example, we'll get animals like bearded dragons or corn snakes, and we do the work that other rescues are sometimes not willing to do with exotics, where we take them in, find them new homes, and adopt them out. Others we keep as education animals that we take to schools, day camps, and other places, just like the little lizard I'm holding, or big lizard that I'm holding here. And we do programs for the youth where we bring the animals to the schools and the day camps, and they have the opportunity to actually interact with the animals. Because one of the things that I noticed as we grew the organization that not a lot of other groups had was the chance to actually get up close, personal, touch, and hold a living, breathing animal, and that's something that we would like to bring to the public.
Yeah, you actually brought a number of them last year to actual WPAFW, not the virtual WPAFW, and it was great to see a number of the snakes and the lizards and the reptiles in general, because I think you changed the minds of a lot of people that were afraid of snakes, especially. So I think that's a positive right there in that book. Is the little guy the one that knocked the camera down?
Actually, the big girl here.
Big girl.
Yep. And her name is Lucy. She's a species of lizard called an Argentine black and white tegu. They are a species that is gaining popularity on the pet trade. They've been around for a number of years, and one of the things they're, I guess, kind of known for is being an invasive species down in Florida right now. A lot of people hear about the invasive pythons and boas. The tegus, unfortunately, are a species that's causing a lot of habitat destruction because they are a very intelligent predatory lizard. They are capable of eating and taking down prey much smaller than them with great efficiency. And they are expert escape artists, just like her. She is able to successfully break out of her enclosure.
Aww.
She has a sunroom actually right now to herself, and because they're fairly large lizards and can potentially have a temperament, a lot of people end up impulse buying them, not knowing what they're getting into. Me holding Lucy right now, as you can see, she's probably one of the most docile lizards in the world. I can actually, for the most part, when she's not struggling, snuggle with her. But that's something that has taken years of work to get to. She's been worked with since she was little, since she came into the organization, so to speak, when she was 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
And she's been to a number of education programs where she's been around people. When she starts acting up like this, that means that it's time to put her down and just let her kind of do her thing.
She's done with everything. I've just stopped.
Yeah, they're very destructive lizards too, and a lot of people don't realize that when they first buy them. So they'll buy the little babies, they're like that big at a reptile expo or reptile show or a pet store, depending on where you live. Some pet stores do sell them. And then
let's be fair, pet stores still sell crocodiles and alligators, and so, I mean, that's not necessarily a good thing, but yeah.
Yes, and these lizards require, there's a lot of work that's put into them in order to actually keep them happy, healthy, and to live long lives. A big misconception that I hear about a lot of animals we get in is that if I keep it in a small cage, it's only going to grow to the size of that cage, and that's untrue with just about any animal that you find out there.
Yeah.
A fish, a mammal, a reptile, a bird, it doesn't matter. The thing is intended to grow to its maximum length and live its maximum lifespan, provided it has the measures and ability to do so. Fortunately for the animals that come through TASOW, like Lucy, we're able to give them a relatively happy and healthy life by giving them the care that they need, and finding them the homes that will do the same for them if we are unable to do so.
Oh, that's good. Like, when? By the way, if you see me look over here, it's me actually keeping a tab on the chat. So if people do ask questions, I will point them out. So I will point out that Ant Armor just pointed out I don't know how many times I'm going to say pointed out in one sentence, but he just posted that there were pictures of the animals from last year. So in the chat, if you go to the link there's a number of pictures that he took of the animals that we indeed interacted with. So if anybody hasn't seen or didn't attend the event last year and is curious to see them, please feel free to go to that link. And Coxum posted, of course, your address for your website. So.
Absolutely.
So what?
Thank you.
No, of course. I mean, we're doing this for you and mostly. So thank you for willing to chat with us and all that. What originally, like you said, I know you went into a little bit of why you chose to go this direction, but what originally drove you to doing TASOW in and of itself? Like, was there you said there was a need for a general like education and hands-on approach, but was there more to it, or was that really the impetus?
Absolutely. I would say that doing TASOW is definitely passion based. It's something that I have been passionate about since I was little. I've always been around animals since I was young. My mom is a wildlife photographer and artist, and she's always been one to, I guess, show off nature, so to speak, and also try to advocate for its conservation. So growing up, I pretty much grew up around animals 24/7. I can remember being 5, 6 years old, living in Florida before my family moved to Greece, and having everything from frogs to fish, and then just being outside. I had an interest in what's this little thing here, what's this little lizard here, what does this snake do, what is it all about? And I would get yelled at by my mom a lot because I would be that little toddler that came to the house holding a snake that I, at the time in my toddler brain, knew that it wasn't dangerous. But being in Florida, we have 6, 7 species of venomous snakes. And so I can understand like that would be pretty nerve-wracking for my mom. So growing up, I just, was loving of animals, passionate about it, and I wanted to get into a field of work that would put me close to animals, whether it was being a herpetologist in the field, a zookeeper, something to that degree. And as I grew older, went through high school, that passion started to manifest itself more, and I found other individuals who were also passionate about the animals and about conservation. So back when we were high schoolers in 2004, we actually started the group. A lot of people don't know this. We started the organization as just a little after-school club, and we didn't even do exotic animal rescue at that time. We kept animals as pets. We had our own pets, but we were trying to become kind of a film-based organization, if that makes any sense. So to
Educational
Sal's
films?
early years, what's that?
Like educational films?
Yes, to South wildlife documentaries.
Oh,
So
nice.
Sal's early years in high school were actually spent kind of testing around film equipment, and we were those kids that would go out in the woods and try to film like nature documentaries, basically on like local Pennsylvania wildlife, and we would bring those documentaries like back to the classroom, just kind of as like our in-class projects. And it was a teacher of ours, a 9th-grade biology teacher to be exact, named Adele, who's still a very good friend of mine. She encouraged us to start doing programs for our classroom and for other classrooms. And so that's where the education aspect started coming to play. So then we'd start bringing our animals into the classroom setting and just kind of talking about them. And as the years went by, we started to expand from our high school, go into college, and we're still doing the programs. And as we were doing these programs, we noticed that people would come up and ask us after the program, like, "Hey, you're pretty knowledgeable on animals. I have a bearded dragon I can't take care of anymore, or my son or daughter got this animal from a pet store and they can't take care of it anymore. Would you by chance be willing to take it? And back then, I really didn't know how to say no. Sometimes I still don't. And we started just kind of accumulating a menagerie, and that's when we started realizing that there was a real need for exotic animal rescue. One of the number one things I would hear people say is we tried to take it to the Humane Society and they won't take it, which is true for a lot of humane societies. They do a great job, and unfortunately, they're not able to take in some of the smaller exotics. And that's the thing I noticed about a lot of rescue organizations. There weren't really a lot that were specialized in like this kind of work. So that's where we kind of started to see the need for it and evolve into doing more of the exotic animal rescue.
Fascinating. Like, what was it? The I actually got a question here, but I'm actually curious too. You mentioned that you moved from Florida to Greece.
Mm-hmm.
So you lived in Greece. So I'm guessing you were born in Florida, lived in Florida, then moved to Greece. And when did you move
Yep.
to PA? And how did the time in Greece? Because I can imagine there's lots of exotic animals over there, especially in terms of like reptiles and whatnot.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. A little bit more backstory to myself personally. I'm from a bilingual household. My dad was a Greek immigrant who came to the States back in the 60s and 70s.
Wow.
And he was also an artist too, just like my mom. He was an abstract impressionist artist, and they met at an art show back in the 1980s, or early 1980s, at the Clearview Mall in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah.
I travel around and do art shows and met my mom there. And so when they had, after they had me, they moved down to Florida, or they moved down to Florida to have me, I'm sorry, because my mom's side of the family had, my grandfather had work that he was doing in Florida at the time. And so I spent the first 5 years of my life there. Then my dad decided for business purposes to move back over to Greece and move the family there. So I spent another 5 years living overseas, and that continued to, I guess, foster my passion for animals and wildlife. At the time when I was living in Greece, one of the things that I noticed is that there was a huge need for animal care and rescue in general, especially in the aspect of our furry and feathery friends. My family spent those years kind of rescuing some dogs, adopting them. We had actually had chickens at one point in time, and so it was just animals kind of the entire time while we
It
were
sounds like
over
how I
there.
envisioned like a little farm outside of Greece, outside of like Athens or something like that. Just
It was actually downtown Athens,
really.
one of the sub. So my dad's house there was one of the older style houses. If you go to Greece now, or even back then, there, especially if you go to Athens, there's a lot of like high rises
Mhm.
and multi-level apartment buildings, which is kind of like the new like 90s to 2000 like modern infrastructure build there.
Everybody moved to
My
cities.
dad's
Yeah, yeah.
house that he had was one of the original like old school just one level Greek houses. So we actually had a small fenced in yard there that had, and my dad's family built that up from the ground
Wow.
up. There was an almond tree there, a fig tree, I
Wow.
think a couple olive trees, and it was closed enough that we could have chickens, a dog, and a couple other animals there. I think I have a distant memory of like my mom, rescuing a hedgehog from like the neighbors, because those are also native there as well.
Yeah.
So, and then when we were moving back to Pennsylvania, I was actually really excited because back then I was very interested in amphibians, and particularly salamanders. And Greece doesn't have a lot in the way of salamanders, so Pennsylvania kind of brought a new,
It helped with that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So the first question that I got here, do you do any rescue of animals from the roadside zoos or other generally inadequate and uncertified facilities?
Yes and no. So unfortunately, we can't take in like large cats, for instance, or animals that have require certain types of menagerie permits. We're just not outfitted to do that either. That would require a large facility, which we don't have. If we can't do it, we'll redirect to like another rescue organization that can. However, when it comes to small reptiles and everything, yes, we actually are capable of taking those in and rehoming them or using them as education animals through our network.
How does Tennessee's laws compare to PA's in terms of like the ownership of animals?
They're actually very similar. So PA is actually very laxed, especially when it comes to reptilian exotics. Tennessee is much the same way as far as Pennsylvania goes. They're very relaxed in that regard. They do have like reptile shows. One of the things that I have noticed being here in Tennessee, and as you can see, I'm kind of leaning forward because I have a lizard sneaking.
I was wondering a little bit. He must have. I was like, he must have a lizard that's just burrowing in places it shouldn't be.
And then I pick her up, and then she's just resting on my lap.
Oh, so, of course.
But yeah, so Tennessee is actually very relaxed as far as the requirements for owning certain animals. I was kind of impressed though because they have actually taken steps in a lot of their pet stores to ban the sale of water turtles, like red-eared sliders, yellow-bellied sliders, etc. And again, I make that sound almost like I'm against owning water turtles, which I'm not. Again, if you know what you're doing, it's just a lot of those animals, unfortunately, are bought on impulse.
They take a certain level of care that is not quite understood by most people. And when people take them in, they don't give them the care that they deserve. And I totally get that. And I think everybody in the chat and everybody watching the stream understands that you're not advocating against the ownership of a lot of different animals. You're advocating for the safety aspect, the fact that these animals need to have their freedom and care that is unique versus any domesticated animals. And these are not domesticated animals. These are live, wild animals that you're taking in. And you have to understand that. But I think a lot of people aren't quite aware of the difference between cats and dogs and everything else. So, another question is, do you take in invertebrates? Like you just mentioned your salamanders, and I think that's...
actually. So when it comes to exotics, I would say that we're trying to get to a point where there's no limit to what we can do, which, unfortunately, given, space and, number of volunteers, etc., that's what is kind of like really our limiting factors at the moment. But as far as species to take in, a lot of invertebrates don't require, permits. And let's say you have a hermit crab that really needs a home it has to go to. I would have no problem taking something like that in, or having a volunteer in my organization be willing to open their home up to it as well. So hermit crabs, spiders, whether it's furry, feathery, whether it has scales or 8 legs or 4 legs, no legs, etc. We want to be open to just about everything.
That's actually fascinating because that really does open it up, because you see a lot of people get rid of pets and they just don't do the right thing with them. They either leave them out to the wild or something like that when they don't know how to fend for themselves, or they put them in an environment in which they are either the dominant predator or the non-dominant predator and immediately killed or destroy the local ecosystem. So like the power of these animals is far beyond what people expect them to be, I think, in a lot of cases. I mean, I think that's probably from your perspective, like you see this a lot. People don't understand how dangerous an animal could be, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. And actually letting them out in the wild is probably the worst thing you can do. Even if say you have an animal species that is actually native to PA. So somebody has a captive bred black rat snake that has been bred in captivity for about 7-8 generations now, is bought at a reptile expo. That's still something that can't be released back into the wild because it wasn't particularly bred for wild release. A lot of those animals have been bred to the point where they're bred for certain color morphs, certain traits, and things like that either wouldn't survive in the wild or be something that could affect the genetic diversity of what we already have in the wild. That's why there's kind of big, advocacy of separating captive breeding for the pet trade from captive breeding for conservation. And there are some people out there that are actually doing a little bit of both to help that out. I actually know a couple breeders in particular, one actually who has a permit from the Florida state government. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the indigo snake or the eastern indigo, but it is a very large colubrid snake. And colubrids, for anyone that is new to hearing that, are the family of snakes that like corn snakes, rat snakes, and king snakes are in.
Okay.
Well, indigo snakes were almost poached to extinction for the pet trade because they're very sought after snakes. So people were catching them out of the wild, illegally selling them, and it got to a point where it just depleted a lot of Florida's native indigo snake species.
Okay.
So they started breeding programs to try to bring the indigos back. And what my one friend actually does is he is a reptile breeder who breeds ball pythons and corn snakes, but not the ones that you would think of as just like your normal ball pythons and corn snakes. He breeds certain color morphs that some of them go in the upwards of like $10,000, etc. They're very expensive snakes that if somebody's actually going to drop money on this creature, then they better be taking care of it. You know, they have paperwork and everything. So one of the agreements he has with the Florida Conservation, I think it's like the Department of Conservation, is he breeds indigo snakes, and 75% of the batch or the clutch of eggs goes into the conservation program and is released into the wild. And the other 20%, 25% are documented and put on permit for actual, captive breeding for the pet trade. And the idea is they want to stop the poaching of the wild indigo snakes to keep people from eliminate the market, basically. From people having to go out in the wild and illegally poach and capture these snakes to now we have a market that if somebody really wants to get an indigo snake, they're going to pay the money for it and they're going to get something that is captive bred and actually through a legal program where the funds and the results are actually going back to benefit conservation.
Makes total sense, actually. And I'm assuming that these color morphs and these specific breeds of these snakes are, I'm going to guess, healthier in terms of like they're generally a healthier branch of the species, or?
Yes and no. It's basically to kind of separate and put like a stamp on the ones that are captive bred so that you can tell them apart from something that is like the wild species. Because most people that are really taking care of their snakes and really wanting to actually own a snake like as a hobbyist are going for like rare and just really weird, color morphs, things that just don't really look like your native species. And there's a controversial kind of gray area in that too. I actually have some qualms about certain color morphs and breeds on some snakes. There's one that I'm actually going to show in particular because of the way that the breeding goes down, that it's something that can cause actual harm to the snake itself. But for the most part, I will say a lot of reptile enthusiasts that do the captive breeding do get more of a bad rap than what they deserve, because there are a lot of them out there that are trying to advocate for conservation.
Gotcha.
The big thing is to try to eliminate catching the wild animals and taking them out of the wild, and thus depleting wild populations. So we want to keep our wild animals wild and free, and things that are captive bred in captivity. Yep. I guess it's kind of the same concept as like a dog and a wolf, so to speak.
Yep.
We don't want people going out and getting wolves to bring them back in as pets when there are tons of dogs that are at rescues that also need to be rescued too. So there's a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that these people do not know how to take care of the wild animals. Make sure you know how to take care of them and all that. So I was actually going to get to the next question in a bit, but might as well bring it now. Why did you choose Chattanooga specifically for your expansion? Is there a specific need there, or was it just happenstance that you guys, like, one of you moved there, like one of those types of things?
I'm actually glad you mentioned that. So I actually have next to me, I'm going to bring him in on the video here, my marketing coordinator for the Austin Spirit of Wildlife, Louis, and he's the one that actually helped make my decision on moving down to Chattanooga.
Oh.
I think you guys met him last year at the fur there. Actually, there's a little bit of a glare going on, so I'm going to try to...
But the lighting, we don't have the best lighting in here.
Fair. But, I'm blown away that I was able to do what I did in here. Like I'm like, holy crap! I got lighting that doesn't suck. So I'm happy about it. So I get
looking for like some kind of lamp or something.
It's hard, yeah. Believe me. And I'm not a photographer. I don't even know what I'm doing. So I just got lucky. But go ahead. Sorry.
But Yeah, so Louis can probably explain it even more, but Chattanooga is a growing area right now. There's not a lot of rescue organizations like ours in the area that are doing the same work that TASOW is doing. So it's kind of a experimental opportunity, so to speak. Louis moved here about 5 years ago?
But 6 years now.
Wow, 6 years. So, yeah, and when he moved down here, he actually started his own business in the area, and he found out really quickly that Chattanooga, unlike some places, is kind of new to just about everything. There's a lot of people, I guess, migrating here from the north, the west coast. It's got a very, I would say, almost progressive attitude to the area as opposed to a lot of other places in the South. When I first heard my friend was moving to Chattanooga, I was kind of like, well, what's down there, because
it's a great sounding name. Come on.
Yeah, it's a Native American name too.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. But so he moved down here, and there's the past 5 years alone, growing even your business, seeing how that's just kind of overcome a lot of hurdles and just expanded quickly, so to speak, in a new area. We wanted to see how our organization would do down here.
Cool.
As you know, in Pennsylvania, we kind of have grassroots there as far as growing from the time we were in high school, being able to found a nonprofit group, learn what a nonprofit group was and what it does and how to actually run one was just an entirely new concept to us. So we've kind of, I guess, for the past 13 years on and off, just kind of fumbled the football around, learning our way. And now that I like to say we know what we're doing, this is kind of a new and rare opportunity for us to kind of just build a new chapter from the ground up here and, see how far we can take that in half the time.
Yeah. That's actually, to be fair, that's actually pretty impressive. Like, it really goes with the goal of what you were saying, too, about there doesn't seem to be conservation specifically for these types of animals. There doesn't seem to be rescue organizations that are directed at reptiles, amphibians, and invertebrates, because it just isn't something that a lot of people, I think about. So to spread your wings and go different places is a really fantastic thing, just in general. Now, because he's here and because you're here, who all outside of you guys are the leadership? How many of you are the leaders, and what are each of your roles?
So, as far as our leadership goes, our board of directors is kind of what governs the entire organization. So that's split up between myself, Louis is the marketing coordinator, I'm the president of the organization, and then some of you met Josh McCracken last year.
Yep.
Unfortunately, he's unable to make it tonight due to work, so he does apologize. But he's the vice president of the organization and actually what we're now calling our Pennsylvania chapter president.
Nice.
So he's managing things in PA while I'm taking care of the show down here, and we kind of link up in the middle. Josh is amazing in his ability to, I'd say, inspire and also run the group up north. Along with him is his lovely wife, Tawny McCracken. She's our PR coordinator. So anything that you have seen on, let's say, our website, or if you have gotten a hold of our brochures, our business cards, any of our flyers, all that stuff, press releases, everything, Tawny has been responsible for that. Also, alongside us is Travis Weimer. He is our secretary. So the website, tasow.org, is actually his pet project, his baby. We have a lizard rubbing up against us like a cat right now.
Speaking of my pig leg.
Just,
Aw.
yeah. But
I want warm, it says. Is that Lucy?
But yeah, and Travis is our group secretary, and I'm not forgetting anybody else on mine. The entire board together. Yeah. I was making sure. I've had a couple hours of sleep, so I'm just making sure.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Thank you for being willing to stay up for this.
No worries. We love that you guys are doing this, first of all, for us, and we also love the fact of just being here. And what I was gonna say even before you started the live feed was, even if this whole broadcast makes $0, I actually don't mind one bit. Just getting the chance to be on here and talk to you guys. I want to speak for even the rest of the organization that was there, not just the board, but we had such a good time last year. Like, such an amazing time. Not just, with the donations and everything, but actually just being there with you guys and enjoying the night, and it was a blast. It's probably it's actually hands down is the greatest event that our group has ever been a part of.
Everybody was very hospitable.
Oh yeah, and we were definitely looking forward to getting together with you guys this year. Of course, we're 100% looking forward to it next year. So, just the fact that I can give you guys my time for everything that you've done, for us is, that's a bonus right there. So I really appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
We all.
No, and we really much appreciate what you guys are doing, and we mean that sincerely, because everybody who goes to these things are generally animal lovers. I mean, and it doesn't require it to be a dog or a cat. They're generally animal lovers across the board. So you have so many. Oftentimes they see the dog and cat rescues, which we bring in oftentimes as well. But to see something new and see something that is focused on an underserved population of wildlife is frankly wonderful, and everybody was really excited. And as I mentioned, I think you turned some people on to snakes, and you made people like snakes whenever they were a little bit nervous about snakes. So I think that's a good win right there.
They have a good way of rubbing off on you.
Yeah, and
no pun intended. Just down there.
And really, it was mentioned by another one of our staff. Actually, you're more than welcome to join us outside of charity events. Like if there's other things that we have going on, to promote your business or promote TASOW, please let us know, because there's a lot of times there's things that would go on and whatnot. They're charity, or if they're not, there's still events that go on, and you would enjoy that too with us. So, a couple more questions from people. Actually, this is a really good one that I didn't even think about. What roles do you have for volunteers?
Okay, well, that's a good one right now. So I didn't actually get into how COVID has affected us recently, but with and without COVID, one of the major roles for volunteers that we have is, of course, the foster program. So as some of you are aware, we do not have a facility set up yet. That is in the works. We are currently relying on what we call a volunteer network for housing our animals. So we have about 35 active volunteers in the Western PA area. Chattanooga, of course, is brand new, so until we get things started up here and in full swing, we don't have any volunteers minus me and Louie down here. We're the home base, so to speak, of the organization now. But a lot of the volunteers that we look for people that can help us actually house animals. So what we do is something called fostering. There's adoption, and then there's fostering. Adoption is when the animal gets adopted out to a new loving home. That's when the adopting family obviously takes ownership of the animal, and they're providing the care for it, everything the animal needs. Fostering is when we have both volunteers, and they actually don't even have to be volunteers. Generally, people who foster end up becoming volunteers anyway. They will take an animal that we actually have or are housing currently. So let's say Lucy, the lizard I was holding earlier. Let's say I'm going to foster her out to you, Justin. Then you would take her into your home. You basically provide her the place to stay while we provide, the enclosure, the housing, the funding, food, etc. And every month, we check up and see, how you're doing, how Lucy's doing, and provide a set amount of either funding or food, etc. for you to help go for her care.
Oh, that's remarkable.
And in return, if you want to volunteer for us, then great. That leads me to the second role of volunteers, where we do education programs. So I love having a crew that is able to not only get up in front of people and talk, but also be able to fill support roles, because we have a lot of our education programs require they're pretty complex. They require a lot of work and thought put into them, and not just for the presenters and the speakers, but we need people that can hold animals like in the background or help switch animals out, make sure critters aren't getting too stressed at the programs, be able to kind of help funnel traffic, etc. So people that can help us at our education programs. And then, of course, there's the third part of volunteering, which is pretty much just advocating for us, or like advertising us, talking about TASOW, what our mission statement is, who we are, what we do, that kind of thing.
I can tell you a lot of the staff are really adamant about it. So in some ways, they're trying to do volunteer work for you in that way. Trying to.
You guys are awesome. We really do appreciate that.
No, we very much appreciate what you guys are doing. Just as a joke, if you wanted to join us, somebody, what our staff member said, we'll loan you our personas if you really need them.
You know, you say at the Missouri event you want to dress up like a fox, right?
Yeah, man, some kind of wolf.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, we're serious about this. WPAFW 2021 is it coming up? Yeah, 2021 coming up here. Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And I talked to you about this. I don't think so. For everybody that's actually watching right now, as I said before, we had such an amazing time at the last event, and we think what you guys do is so awesome and so important that after, whether or not we're the organization being funded or not, we would love to make your Western PA Furry Weekend event an official event that we attend every year and actually come to. And I will drive up from Tennessee every year to just be there and be a part of that. And Louis here too. It's awesome.
We would love that, and I promise you that we would absolutely love that, because that shows a bit of a it'd be cool to have all of the different organizations that we've helped in some ways come by and just say, hey, here's what we did, and here's what we could do, and here's what we continue to do. It's good to keep up with the organizations that we have supported in the past. So that we would love that. I can promise you that. We'd figure out the logistics later, but I can guarantee you that that's something we would love to see.
Absolutely.
And I was going to ask this question too, but this is a good one right now. You mentioned that you don't have the facility, and I know that's something you were working to last year. What are your plans overall for expansion?
Into Tennessee or Pennsylvania? I mean, I guess
in both in that sense, because I know that you don't have a facility in PA, and I think you're probably working towards something there, and in Tennessee, what your entire goal is. So.
The overarching goal in Pennsylvania, of course, is we want to hopefully within the next couple of years here, and I don't want to put a major time frame on it, because once again, it's one, funding depending, and two, we've had a little bit of a setback with COVID, of course, going on with the events and everything we've been able to do. But we'd love to set up a base of operations there that we can just use to house the animals. We're very grateful for what our volunteers are doing as far as fostering goes, but in order to actually affect things on an even larger scale and even be able to take in animals that we unfortunately have to say no to now, we need to have more space for it. So it's basically going to be searching for the right property, the right time, finding a facility or a building at least that suits us. And it doesn't have to be actually the most perfect building ever. It could be like a pole barn or something like that. We've even had talks about getting like land and putting a trailer on it and starting there and just growing from that point. But first and foremost, it has to be for the animals, like a place that we can house and keep them safe, keep them comfortable. Secondary goal of that facility would be to have a place that we can actually bring people to do education programs out of. And again, that's something that's reaching a little bit further, into the future. But I would say immediate future is looking for somewhere that we can have just kind of like our home base for the animals themselves.
Yeah, I think your idea about like building out a pole barn or something on a piece of property gives you that expansion ability to maybe have like some sort of theater-based area. That's kind of a great idea, frankly. So, and what overall is is it the same goal in Tennessee, or are you going for a different angle?
Yes, although as far as Tennessee goes, it's kind of like we're starting almost new here with the chapter. So my primary focus with Tennessee is going to be to build a volunteer base first. Get that going to the point where it is in PA, and I guess in a way almost have the facility be a symptom of that growth that occurs here. It's not, I guess, a matter of if, but when the right situation pops up for having that facility. It is very funding dependent, first off.
Yeah.
Funding and planning, of course. But we want to make sure that we get something that is not, I guess, putting us out of funding for caring for the animals overall. There's a lot of funding that goes into feeding them, keeping them, safe, housed, and of course, education programs. I would say as much money as we get through donations from education programs, we still put a lot of money towards them in actually going out there and bringing these animals out to the public, because that's something that we feel is kind of our duty or our service to do to kind of bring these animals to people so that they can, in effect, I guess, change their opinions on some of them too.
Yeah, and
help them get a greater understanding.
You did that for sure. I can almost guarantee that. Just another question came in, which is good. I still have a number of questions, so thanks for sticking around, and I appreciate this. I know it's a bit of a long interview, but a long question and answer and all that. But another question is, what other animal rescue charities do you partner with, and do you partner with other events like reptile shows?
Yes. Yes and yes. Actually, we have partnered in the past and still do with some of the local wildlife rehabs in Pennsylvania. There's Sky Spirit Wildlife Rehab, which is in Harrisville, Pennsylvania. There's Wild Bird Recovery in Mars, and then we have also occasionally worked with Tamarack Wildlife Rehab, which is in Meadville. One of the things that we've done for Sky Spirit especially is we'll do joint programs with them where we'll kind of use because the one thing that they can't do is let people touch and hold their animals, whereas we can. So we kind of use that strength, I guess, to their advantage to be able to also not only pull funding for us, but kind of do like a joint funding where whatever anybody contributes to the program itself gets split 50-50 between us and them. We've done events like that in the past. Another thing that we've done is if the rehab facilities or the animal rescues are short-staffed, we've actually gone out and helped her out with catching animals or directing people towards her, or even directing people toward the other rescues when they've gotten filled up. So that's one of the things that we've done with them. We would like to partner with other organizations that not only do similar exotic animal rescues, but also cat and dog rescues, or even bird rescues. I do get a lot of questions about birds. Birds are an avenue which I would like to go eventually with TASOW, but I don't like to call any one animal more complicated than another one, but that's definitely that requires a large facility. I didn't share this, but I'm currently working at the Chattanooga Zoo as well as doing TASOW here, and I've seen our little aviary and how much work goes into like the rescue birds that they have there. That it's kind of an eye-opening experience.
Actually, just a sec, because you're here. Like, what kind of marketing events are you working towards? Like, how are you utilizing? How are you marketing? I should ask, because I don't want to.
In general for TASOW, or for how we're doing it in Tennessee?
You're stationed down there, both of you, right? Mm-hmm. You're both focusing on the TASOW in Chattanooga. What are you doing to get the word out? Are you partnering down there as well, or like with other charities down there, or again the reptile show thing? Have you done that same thing in the Chattanooga region yet, or is that still something that's to come?
Still something that's to come.
In the past, it was a lot easier. I'm talking about pre-COVID, of course.
Oh yeah.
I guess if we're talking about right now, there's only so much we can do here in Chattanooga, especially since we're starting everything from scratch. Really, it's just about getting our name out there first. That way, we can then begin accepting any animals that need rehabilitation, and then from there, we grow volunteers to take care of said animals. And just keep repeating that step until we get to the size that we are in Pennsylvania.
Cool.
And with that will come, events that we've done at schools, or even birthday parties to do educational parties for young kids, especially that don't know how to handle these. Well, I mean, it's good for the adults too, but especially kids. They're outside playing and they run into any kind of exotic animals that we can teach them about. But as of right now, because of COVID, it's just really, trying to wait this thing out as long as we can, take care of everybody who's fostering. So really, marketing has been put, it's been slowed down just a little bit because we're trying to focus on the animals that are already out there and taking care of them. That way, once everything starts getting back, I guess, to, quote unquote normal, we can then start to book those events like we used to.
Yeah, and that makes total sense because you have an uphill battle when you go to a new place, and it makes total sense that really your focus now is to just push and push and push and push. So, no, that makes perfect sense. Now, this is sort of for the future, admittedly. This is a down the road, admittedly. Right now, you've been working on Chattanooga and you're working on PA still. Would you assume you got your Chattanooga location up to snuff? If you could earmark another location to expand in terms of need, has there been any thought about it? Is there a place that you would choose?
Honestly, I don't think we thought that far ahead.
As far as like another state, no, not yet. Maybe further expanding in the Pennsylvania area, and then further expanding in the Tennessee area.
Makes sense.
Maybe work on another state.
Which that makes a lot of sense because, for example, in Pennsylvania, we have a lot of volunteers in Slippery Rock area. We have a lot of volunteers in Pittsburgh area. And one of the big hurdles to kind of overcome, especially with events and meetings, especially in wintertime, just pre-COVID, is getting volunteers from Slippery Rock to go to Pittsburgh, or from Pittsburgh to come up north to Slippery Rock. And it would really just be easier in the future, expanding wise, if we could even separate those into two, separate chapters itself, which is kind of a goal. Again, it doesn't mean that both ones, have to have a facility. I would love that to happen. I mean, I would love for every chapter to have a facility for the animals and for doing education programs. But I think as far as the future goes, and as far as we expand this, we're going to be looking at other TASOW chapters, kind of popping up in different regions, and hopefully we get to a point where we kind of have a network, spanning from down here in Chattanooga up to, Pennsylvania as far as, animal rescue goes. There's other organizations out there that do animal rescue that have similar, networks where they're able to transport animals from, let's say, one state to the other, albeit having permits, etc. And that's something that, would be really awesome to get into because let's say we have a network established and, hey, Chattanooga is getting overloaded and we just got an alligator in and
PA is more lax on that, yeah.
Yeah, but PA's got a facility ready equipped. What permits do we need to get this thing transported and get it up there so it's safe and comfortable, that kind of thing. So.
Makes total sense. Speaking of that type of transportation, now I could be misremembering this or misinterpreting this, but as I was down at there was another charity down in Texas that does big cat rescue. Now, this has nothing to do with Tiger King. Nothing at all.
I haven't watched a single episode.
Okay, nothing to do with this. I'm telling you, everybody else has nothing to do with that.
In case anybody.
Yeah, exactly. This organization actually they had a weird situation where all they did was big cats, and they were contacted by, I forget exactly who. Might have been a zoo. Might have been a wildlife rehabilitation center that didn't realize what they were getting, and they got in lemurs. Now in Texas, apparently, animals can be brought into the state. You cannot export animals whatsoever, like that are not standard exotic animals. Like you can bring in whatever you want, but you can't export animals like that are exotic. And they were basically like, we don't know what to do with this, and we can't take it outside the state to send it home. Will you take them? And the big cat rescue was like, sure. And they built an enclosure for this. Have you ever run into a situation where it would necessitate basically going outside of your intended focus and having to accommodate a weird situation like that, where because of a law you have to make concessions?
Yes, actually. Sorry, I was reaching for a lizard there that's trying to get into the computer I
You're
have
fine.
plugged in. But actually, that was when I went from calling TASOW just a reptile rescue to an exotic animal rescue. Was the day we actually got our first bird. This was probably about 5-6 years ago. We ended up actually having the space, what I did at the time, to house a Solomon Islands eclectus parrot that our organization got in that someone couldn't take care of anymore, named Darwin. And I worked with Darwin for about a good year and a half. It actually changed my perspective on parrots, which kind of sounds funny, but having worked with reptiles for all these years, I guess my kryptonite has always been parrots, cockatoos, and their family. I've had some bad experiences with them, and I'm sure people have had bad experiences with reptiles. And I really wanted to kind of challenge myself and overcome that. So I volunteered to house this bird, and I did this for about a good year and a half. And I got to bond with him. I took him to education programs, and it was actually really sad when the time came for us to part. He went to a very loving home. The lady who got him actually had it was like a flight enclosure for her parrots, and he was actually going to be used as another educational bird too. We ended up taking in a bird for the first time, which was a huge challenge because everything we have geared toward taking in reptiles. Now, this has been just a thought. I've sat down and I've talked with the board about this. This is something that's kind of after we get out of COVID here, was to start expanding, seeing how it works. But the overall goal with TASOW is to expand not only to just doing reptiles, but also looking at doing things like amphibians, invertebrates, as we talked about, and something a lot of people don't even really consider, and I'm starting to gain a lot more knowledge and respect for it. My two current jobs that I'm working are fish, actually.
Really?
People don't think about it much, but there's a lot of people out there that own fish that sometimes even impulse buy them and ask if they can take the fish back to the pet store. And I have met a few rare individuals through my travels here that actually would love to do fish rescue and have something set up where they have basically an aquarium-based facility that they can take, people's Oscars they can't, keep because they don't have a large enough tank, or even everything down to a betta fish. So I think the overall future goal for TASOW is to expand to the point where if it's exotic and other rescues can't take it in, we can actually be kind of a bastion of hope for those animals.
Oh, that's actually fascinating. I think fish, as you mentioned, aren't really thought about as. I think in a lot of ways, fish are not considered in the same category of animal. They're sort of like the ancillary pet, and that's kind of it's really kind of unfortunate towards fish because they take just the same amount of care. It's just they don't seem to, because they seem to be taking care of themselves most of the time, and you don't take them outside, you don't move them around, you can't really cuddle with them, you can't do anything that you would do with another animal that is not living in water. So I think that's a fair and I think a really noble direction. And in fact, I should actually be a foster in some fashion in this, because I like the idea of fostering a lot of these animals. Like I don't know if I could ever foster a dog or a cat, because I think there's one thing that I get too associated with those types of animals. But I think as a foster person, you want to be attached, but you also don't want to be too attached to an animal, because they will go. And I think in a lot of ways, I love a lot of these animals, and I think this might go for some other people too. I do not know. But I love these animals, but I don't get as attached as I would maybe as a cat and dog, and I'm able to give them the care that they need and also give them the freedom that they need whenever they do need to be given to their forever home. And actually specifically around that, I think you answered a good deal of this too. Are volunteers, fosters expected to provide everything for the animal themselves, or does TASOW have resources to help with that? I think you said that the enclosures and there's like stipends associated with that.
Yeah, we provide the resources and the funding, so to speak, to the foster family to house the animal for TASOW. And we even go as far as, I've had a couple of volunteers that this is a good thing. I've kind of caught just like, no, I'll take care of it, actually spending a lot of their own money on the animal itself. And we'll actually, reimburse them, for that, for any expenses that they have. I've had a lot of volunteers just kind of graciously donate time and even resources to foster animals that we've had, and then just insist that we don't reimburse them on it. But we actually provide the funding for that, and the housing and everything. At least we obviously advocate for doing that.
Yeah, and I think it's good. Like regardless of like this is said once or twice, I think it's good to hear it again because I think a good deal of people might have a big I can't do that, I can't afford that. But at the same time, if you guys are providing this and you do have the time and the energy to give to an animal to be a foster parent, so to speak, it's hugely valuable to you guys because
and we're sharing resources too. One of the things, actually, a good example, the snake that I'm about to take out and show. We have one of our volunteers. It's a Pennsylvania volunteer. She actually lives in West Virginia, and she comes to do all of our programs in Pennsylvania. And, she drives all the way over there. She's actually a bat biologist.
Wow.
And she has a couple people in her neck of the woods that are also interested in joining. So I guess there would be another location to expand to. It's kind of questionable. We might expand to there or not.
A straight shot, right straight down to Pennsylvania, down to Chattanooga. There you go.
It's close enough, but she just recently had a friend, or it was an acquaintance, I think, someone who owned they had a lot of geckos, and unfortunately these people ended up having to stop, owning geckos or breeding geckos. I'm not sure exactly what the story was, but they had a lot of leftover equipment, and so they realized that she was part of our organization, and they donated all their stuff to her, and just kind of dropped it off. And so she had a surplus of supplies. So on my way back down to Tennessee from my last Pennsylvania visit, we were adopting a snake with a disability, which I'll show you a little bit here. And we needed some much needed enclosure equipment and stuff for it down here, since we pretty much don't have really much down in Tennessee at all now. And she was able to actually provide like one of the tanks and pretty much everything we needed. And now I have a home for the snake. Which I'll get him out here. So,
yeah,
long story short, COVID has kind of been an interesting time for both myself and TASOW, as we've been having to adapt to the changes. One of the things that you asked was, or I don't know if it was asked yet, about how we've been looking at adapting through this, but we've been looking at having more, I guess, of a virtual presence, at least until this thing subsides. But another thing that we actually could use help with right now, our Vice President Josh McCracken, our Pennsylvania chapter president, I should say, he has been wanting to do. We've had an idea to do trash cleanups or waterway cleanups to help promote conservation for waterways, because waterways provide habitats for native species of reptiles, amphibians, and even fish, birds, etc. And through COVID, a lot of people have been getting their recreation by going outside. And oops, that was a lizard that did that. By going outside and enjoying outdoor activities. Unfortunate result is there's a lot more trash and a lot more just kind of
you would think people would clean up after themselves, but they're not.
Yeah. Before. Yeah, so we wanted to kind of make an effort and get people together, to get our volunteers together and at least give them something to do during this time. So we've been thinking about organizing a couple trash cleanups. Once again, these are pending. We're going to be putting together a plan for that. We'll be advertising them on our Facebook page and I believe our website once we get them up and running. But if anyone does want to help us and volunteer for those, I know the guys in Pennsylvania could definitely use some help with getting a group together one day, going out, social distancing, wearing the mask, the whole 9 yards, and maybe doing a trash cleanup.
You know what's funny about that?
That's one of the things.
I forgot one important detail, and that's a pen. If you don't mind me grabbing one pen, just so I can write this down, because I think a lot of people who see this and a lot of people who are involved in this would actually love to do that. So let me grab a pen, and I'll be right back in 1 second. But I'll give you a question to answer while I'm walking away, because it's rude if I don't. So you're going to show us the ball python. What's or the snake? I shouldn't give it away. I'm sorry. What's his name again? And what is going on with him?
So he's our first official Tennessee rescue. We've named him Curly Q, and let's see if I can get some light on the subject there. So as a result of COVID, I actually ended up fortunately landing 2 dream jobs, so to speak, here in Tennessee. So I got hired by the Chattanooga Zoo, which I'm working in their education department now, doing education programs, also working with the kids, much of like what I do at TASOW. I also ended up getting a part-time job at a local PetSmart. Now, I have harped for years on corporate-owned pet stores. However, a lot of them depend on their management and who is running the store. The PetSmart here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, is one of the most amazing pet stores that I've ever actually encountered because they put a lot of time and effort into not only educating about animals, but they also make sure that they work with one of the local exotic vets and are partnered with the same vet that the zoo uses in saving animals that come in that are sick. I think I told you this, we spent $4,000 or something like that on a try to
Yep.
save a guinea pig one time. Well, we are no longer, PetSmart's no longer going with this particular breeder, but there was a distributor that they were getting their ball pythons from that has since been blacklisted. And they were giving us a breed called spider ball pythons, which unfortunately are very popular on the pet trade. Spider balls, which is what he is, are achieved through a degree of interbreeding, unfortunately. So a result of that is that 50% of the clutch ends up having a 50-50 chance of developing a neurological disorder, and that neurological disorder can be mild to severe. Fortunately, Curly Q's neurological disorder is mild, and he's actually not exhibiting a whole lot of it right now. It kind of looks like he's poised to strike. He's actually not. This is kind of his normal, stance. He'll actually lay with his head kind of tilted to the side, and he's not able to move like a normal snake. He kind of, it looks like he's kind of going into a death roll, so to speak, and it looks like the snake is dying as it's moving, but he's actually perfectly normal. I mean, not normal, but that's how he moves. He has trouble striking at food. He misses about 80% of the strikes that when I'm feeding him pre-killed rats, so I kind of have to literally make it easy for the food to get into his mouth. Another thing is he probably can't swim like a normal snake. So unlike most ball pythons where we provide a water dish that's deep enough for them to fully soak in, I have one that is impossible for him to basically drown in because that's a big concern with him. So he's not, your normal ball python. But unfortunately, as I said, these guys are achieved through a degree of interbreeding to get the spider balls, and that's something that I kind of advocate against in the captive breeding. Is that having these breeds is kind of like a novelty thing. So to breed them for this particular trait and have the clutch turn out 50-50 chance of developing this neurological disorder, to me that's kind of ethically wrong. So Curly Q, fortunately, was unable to go to any other home because nobody would have really wanted to buy him, so to speak. So the great thing that our local PetSmart does is they actually put them up for adoption to loving homes. And the guy who works with me in the small pet care section, who is actually the guy who's teaching me everything about fish right now and thinking about the fish rescue portion that we talked about, he actually nominated me as the possible candidate for adopting this little guy, and they actually ended up giving us this snake here pretty much free of charge. So he's become our official first Tennessee rescue.
Nice.
We're hoping to grow him into an education animal. He's very well tempered, not head shy at all, and he's eating like a champ. So we're hoping to eventually be able to get him out to some school programs. So between him and the tegu we just showed you, we do have a small crew of animals. So I guess Tennessee overall in a nutshell is me and Louie and two animals. So
Nice.
2 humans and 2 animals.
Aw. So the lizard's just causing havoc, I can tell, and the snake is just sort of like, all right, whatever.
Yes, actually, what she's doing right now, the lizard, this is another thing that I talk about when it comes to owning tegus and them being very destructive, is she normally won't poop on the floor. They like to, I want to call it litter box trained, but they'll normally do their business either in their water dish or in a pile of dirt. So what she was trying to get to a few moments ago was one of the poor potted plants that we have in our sunroom. She has almost killed this thing. It's a lime tree plant. I let her have free roam one day without realizing that she could reach the plant that's on the coffee table, and she ended up jumping up and knocking it over and pushing the dirt into a corner and then pooping in it.
Great.
She likes to make her own litter box. So it's probably what she's trying to do right now is get to the poor lime tree plant that we've been so desperately trying to save. We take very good care of our animals, but our poor plant, unfortunately, has suffered just inexcusable abuse here. So
You can't win with everything, plants or.
right.
Um,
The good news is it's making a comeback. It's getting more leaves on
Good.
it. So
Good to
I
hear
think
that.
they did.
I do want to remind everybody who's watching, if you go to wapafa.org/live, there are 3 links there for donation. One is a pure, straight-up donation to, it goes through us, but it's basically a direct donation to TASOW. The second one is commemorative candle. Now, the commemorative candle is for anybody who wants to put in a remembrance for an individual or anybody who's passed or even still around. It could be for anybody. It's $3 to light a candle. And the last is any merchandise that we sell that has WPAFA on it. Any of the proceeds that come from that is also going to TASOW. So anything you purchase, there's a good percentage of that goes to TASOW. So all of these donations will go straight to TASOW at the end of this. So keep that in mind. Please visit if you can. No, of course. I wanted to make sure I stated that, considering we're at the halfway point, and I think it's important for people to know that. Again, we'll probably have a fuzzy thing appearing somewhere behind me at one point in time, maybe in a half an hour or so. But what was, you mentioned that your first rescue in Tennessee was curlicue?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
He's officially the first rescue. Lucy, unfortunately, doesn't count as a Tennessee rescue because we transported her down from, well, she went from Pennsylvania to West Virginia, was being housed with the bat biologist for about a good year and a half. And then once I got myself, kind of set in place, established here in Tennessee, the plan was to make her, the first education animal down here. So we got everything we needed, and I went back up, and I transported her actually down here after the furry event last year. So furry event last year was a twofold mission: one to obviously be with you guys, and 2 to transport
Pick up
Lucy back
Lucy.
to Tennessee.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what was your first rescue overall up in PA and in general?
Ooh, that's difficult. That's going back years. I want to say that overall it was actually a green iguana named Iggy. This was, again, back when we were still, I think, graduated from high school. He was a 6-foot green iguana that escaping from, I think, his previous owner's house, and somebody ended up finding this iguana crossing the road and managed to catch it, and they pretty much dropped it off at my doorstep. And I ended up working with him for a little over 2 years.
Wow.
He actually became an educational animal and went to a number of events with us. He ended up actually being one of our first adoptions too, because he got to a point again where even we were a little bit ill-equipped to handle him. This was again one of our first rescues, and we realized he needed a little more than what we could provide for him. The owner that got him, and this was years ago, I believe actually had a whole room set up, which was one of the things that I learned from and taught since then, that when it comes to keeping animals like green iguanas, especially green iguanas, because they get huge, they pretty much require an enclosure that is kind of like half a room. They're arboreal. I would say they require maybe even a little more than like the Argentine tegu, which I showed here, and they're definitely not a beginner animal. A lot of places will sometimes advertise them as beginner animals, and unfortunately, this breaks my heart every time to see it. But if you go to like your local county fairs, or at least you used to in some places, you would see baby green iguanas as like prizes for win from doing certain games at a fair, which is definitely not something that I am for in the least.
Are they different than are the green iguanas the standard iguana that people think about? Or is that a different?
Yes,
Really?
That's a species name.
Wow.
Yeah, the green iguana is the standard one. They're the most common iguana in the world, actually. They're native to Central and South America. When I was studying in Costa Rica, which is a place they're native to, and you went kayaking or canoeing on the rivers there, you would see them jump out of the trees into the water to like escape you or escape predators.
Wow.
They are I want to say they're one of Florida's first invasive species, because before the whole invasive python thing became a thing, um, green iguanas were actually had well established populations in South and Central Florida for years before that, and that was once again due to the pet trade. Now, a lot of people didn't pay them any mind because they're herbivores, and even though they're an invasive species, they didn't cause as much habitat destruction as the boas and pythons do. So they kind of became one of those animals that had been around for so long that it was a introduced species that's kind of become part of the local ecosystem,
Gotcha.
so to speak. Kind of like, I guess, honeybees. So but they're not native to Florida, even though you can find them in South Florida.
No, and it's fascinating that they are the common ones people think about because, kids have iguanas. It's a common thing. A kid has an iguana. Whoop-de-doo. It's the first reptile you go for. And it's actually interesting to me because I didn't realize how big they got at that point. I had no idea that they would grow to be, you said 6 foot is...
Oh, yeah. Males can reach 6 feet easily.
Jeez.
Females usually stay about 5 feet, which is still huge. They can also have really bad attitudes to them as well.
I've heard that.
Very powerful bite. Males in particular can get very territorial. You can't house them with other males because they'll fight, or even other iguanas in general. Once again, it depends on the individual male. Although I've had kind of much like parrots, I've noticed iguanas sometimes have preferences for like their owner. So there's some that'll be really nice with their handlers, and then others that just won't let anybody else, other than their handler, have anything to do with them, basically. So I think they've done a really good job, though, since of eliminating them as a primary animal in the pet trade. And I will say a lot of pet stores have kind of replaced them with bearded dragons, which are a little bit better to keep. And notice I use the word better, not easier.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a cat, dog, or even a reptile. There's pros and cons to keeping every animal. I don't think any one is easier than another one. Even when I'm at PetSmart and I have people come in and say, hey, what's the easiest reptile to take care of? I kind of smile a little bit and I'm like, well, I can show you something that would be a little bit better to take care of than this particular animal, so to speak. And after I go through the list of requirements that even the leopard gecko needs, some people are like, wow, that's a lot. And I'm like, well, yeah, it definitely does take a lot.
It's a living, breathing animal,
kudos to that local PetSmart because they actually allow me to do that, to advocate for that. They're one of the few pet stores I've noticed that will actually they will decline sales to people if we don't think that we're not comfortable with them.
That's good.
So it's fully within our right. They are actually going to be hopefully the place that we actually hold our first event once we're able to do that down here. So,
wow, it's so good. It's so good to hear that you have these. Even though they're a corporate entity, you have these franchises that do their dangness to make sure the animals that they're taking care of are given the correct care. And it's just refreshing to hear that when you hear of so many weird horror stories like the different pet owners associated, like in Ohio, a number of years ago when we had the tigers and the lions that were set free when the owner was in a bad state of mind. And you hear about these stories, and you ever hear about the good stories associated with different pet stores. Like I know of a few that are around where I grew up. One of them especially, they house a tortoise, and they do it just as humanely as they could possibly do it. And he's the pet mascot. He roams the whole store. He has free reign, and they take care of him. They take care of him in a number of ways, and he's the pet mascot in every possible way, and they do their best to make sure that he's comfortable. I don't even remember how old he is, but I think he's like 120 or something like that. He's pretty up there. He takes up an entire aisle, and if you walk down the aisle and he's there, you go back around because he just sits there and stares at you, and it's very amusing. And I'm not an expert, but he seems to be well taken care of because they're very careful about how they place their pets as well. Like they have a number of different animals for adoption. Then they have a lot of different rodents, a lot of different like fowl even, that they are very careful about who they allow to adopt. So I would not be at all surprised if that tortoise is very happy, because they publicize him very heavily, because they just take pictures of him and you're like, here, this is what he is, this is what he represents, and yeah.
Life.
Yeah, oh yeah, he's gonna be there. He's gonna be there probably longer than that place is even around. So, it was funny is that you mentioned the iguanas, and there was one of our attendees, actually, his Sona is an iguana, and he was like, "Oh, you're talking about me." So there you go.
And we make sure that the species gets the best possible care it can.
Exactly. This is probably a little bit of a hard one. Do you have a favorite rescue you've ever dealt with?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that definitely is a hard one. With trying not to be way too biased, I would have to say that so far, it's a tough one. Currently, it would have to be, but shortly before the furry event last year, we actually had a boa constrictor named Jose. And, he had him for about 8 years. He was an education animal, one of the best boas we've ever had. He had been to, I want to say, over 220 some programs since he was in TASOW, or we first got him. And I mean, like, extremely docile. Like, some snakes you get will be like a little head shy, like you never approach them from the head, which we never let people do that anyway. But this was a boa that I could literally, go up, boop him on the nose, no qualms about it. And he was one of the few animals that we just felt like very comfortable with, having hordes of elementary school kids around him. And he ended up actually passing away of old age last year. We had a little ceremony. He's actually been cremated, and I have his ashes.
Aww.
But he was about 8'5", I think, around the time that he ended up passing, and weighed about 60-some pounds. I mean, he was he was heavy too. But yeah, he was just a joy to work with. I mean, he would sit on you as if he was like a scarf, kind of just like a sash. And he never really got rambunctious or was never uncomfortable with like anything. He was a personality on any of our news interviews that we had. When I think Haley came there last year with the WSRE TV. With the first interview she did with us, she held him, and he actually helped a lot of people get over their fear of snakes. A lot of people didn't expect, such a large snake to be, that docile again.
And Lucy again.
Wasn't as the tegu that's going for the power cord again.
Of course. Oh.
Snake.
Snake and tegu all together. Yeah. Oh, hi, Lucy.
Her in the picture now, finally. So.
Yes. She wants to be up now. She's like, I wanted the attention now. Hi.
She's fine for the most part. She's picked up, but she'll let you know whenever she wants to be let down.
That sounds about right.
Again, every animal we get that's an education, we work with to the point where we feel comfortable taking them out in front of people. Like Lucy here will let me pretty much pet her like on the nose. She actually loves nose rubs.
Aww.
And most tegus, this is something I'm going to say, don't go out and just try this with any animal, because tegus have very sharp teeth, very powerful jaws. A lot of people ask me, does she bite? And my answer is always she has a mouth and teeth.
Yes.
But she does let me show people what her chompers actually look like.
Oh, wow.
So she might not do it fully there. I don't ever force her to do it.
Yeah,
she does have some very powerful jaws there. I actually just posted a Instagram story the other day on feeding her, where I kind of get her to like come and jump for her food and snap almost like a crocodile does. It's kind of intimidating, but yeah, we work with them to the point where people can just feel comfortable coming
wow.
and petting. The idea is I want to be able to feel comfortable putting her on a library table at an elementary school, which she's done before, and just be able to sit there, supervising, of course, with the kids, kind of petting her and touching her, and her not minding. And it's, once again, just like people, it's kind of like reading body language with these guys. She lets know when she's kind of had enough and wants to be put down.
I didn't realize how large their tongues were. It's like all the way back to your hand. How long it is.
closer to the camera here without destroying it. But
Hello.
now she has a circle.
Now she's like wants to get at it. Yeah, she's like, oh, it's camera time. Okay.
My lap and headed down toward the cords. Turn in the opposite direction.
Good.
That's the thing. She knows where she wants to go, and even if I put her to go that direction, she'll act like she's headed that way, and then next
She'll
thing you
circle
know,
back around. Yeah.
At her. Go.
So you said you have an Instagram, and I must have missed this one. Is it at
We
TASOW?
do. So underscore TASOW. Somebody has TASOW already,
Oh.
and I'm trying to petition Instagram to get it, but it's underscore TASOW on Instagram, and for everything else, it's pretty much if you just type in TASOW as a regular
Gotcha.
acronym, find us on.
Gotcha. It's sort of like a little bit different of an approach. That was posted to the chat, which is good. So our staff member, Aunt Namer, posted it to the chat so people can actually look it up. What kind of advice?
Yeah, just got in our feed.
Yeah. What kind of advice would you give for a new reptile or snake owner?
Well, actually, there's two, and this is what I actually tell our elementary school kids too. Do your research is the biggest thing. Every animal has different requirements. So the best possible thing that you can do before getting any animal is, one, doing your research, seeing what all the animal's requirements are. I would say even looking up stories about people who actually own those animals, seeing what they've had to put into it and what kind of struggles they've gone through. And then the second thing is, of course, I advocate getting everything set up before getting the animal. I even tell people this with fish when they go to buy fish is one of the things that we talk about whenever I work at PetSmart, for example. I'm bringing them up again. We actually don't sell fish to people that haven't properly cycled their tanks, because there's something called new tank syndrome, where if you just set up a tank and dump a fish into it, the water has to cycle properly, they'll go into shock and die.
Yeah.
So we always tell people, please cycle your tanks for a minimum of 3 days to a week, and then you can bring in a water sample. We test it.
I remember doing that. Yeah, I remember doing that with fish. You slowly acclimated the fish to the water, and you cycled the water out, and you got it so that the water slowly brought the temperature of the fish back up to where it should be correctly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the same thing with down reptiles. I mean, you want to do your research on the animal first to see what all the requirements are, and then get everything you need for it. If you can't provide a large enough enclosure for it, then it's probably not something for you. So I don't discourage people to not get into reptiles, because this is how we get more people appreciating them, and also get more volunteers doing like what we're doing. I started off as a hobbyist myself. Let's say you can't afford to get an enclosure or everything to house an Argentine tegu right now, but you could start off with a corn snake or a ball python. Yeah. You could start off with a leopard gecko or a bearded dragon. If you can get a hold of, let's say for a bearded dragon, if you can get a hold of a 40-gallon aquarium to start it off in, with all the proper lighting, UVB lighting, understand that it needs that to metabolize calcium, obviously daytime, nighttime heating, making sure those requirements are fulfilled, and of course it's diet too. Also understanding that a lot of animals, especially some of the more complicated ones like lizards, have a more varied diet where you kind of have to alternate foods. So Lucy here is, yes, she's eating about 2, maybe 3 pre-killed rats once a week. In between that, I am giving her other meals with other food as well. She needs to have her greens. She won't eat them on her own, absolutely refuses to do that. So in order to get her to do that, it's a challenge. I have to go out and buy ground turkey and make little turkey balls with collard greens, mustard greens, etc. in them.
Wow.
Loves her fruits, so she eats blueberries, raspberries, even bananas. So I'm almost feeding her like she's a human in some cases.
Yeah, a child. Like, eat your dang vegetables. I gotta hide it in freaking pill form for you.
And right, and that's so that she gets all the nutrients she needs so that she can live a full healthy lifespan, which is in between 20 and 25 years. We had a bearded dragon that we had a lot of original rescues unfortunately pass away from old age last year. But we had a bearded dragon named Nora that we had used as another rescue animal for about 8 years. And Nora was actually being kept very well even before we got her. Her parent before us was a school teacher that actually had her in a classroom, but this school teacher actually took all the necessary steps for keeping her properly. And so we actually knew Nora's age. Thank you.
Wow.
We knew Nora's age, and Nora was actually 28 by the time she passed away.
Wow.
The average lifespan on bearded dragons is between, they say 15 and 20, 25 years. So once they're past 25, that's basically geriatrics right there. So Nora led a very full, healthy life. The only issue we ever had with her was we had to get her foster parent to slow down a little bit on the feeding of certain items because she got a little tubby around her midriff at one point in time, which necessarily a bad thing, but we want to make sure it didn't get out of control so that she didn't have health problems as a result of it. So, just, things like that will help the animal live a long and, healthy life because, just like us, they deserve the opportunity to do that. And I think we as humans are, we have the power. So we're responsible, caretakers of these animals. So these animals, literally in captivity really depend on us to, kind of achieve that. I think it's, if we're going to own the animal, then it's our duty to provide that for them.
Absolutely. Speaking of age, you mentioned Jose. How old was Jose? How old the snakes?
When he passed, we weren't exactly sure exactly how old he was because he was a rescue that actually came from a neglect situation. So a lot of that, we estimated when we first got him, he was between 4 and 6 years old. 4 and 8 years old. So by the time he passed, we estimated he was probably between 25 and 21. Not sure. And that was a guesstimate. We could have been a little bit off on that because, again, abuse and neglect can actually shave
life years off of you.
Animals' life, especially if they're starved or deprived of nutrients. That can really have a very drastic effect on the animal. But he was huge when he passed away. I mean, he was definitely up there in age. Which, by the way, a little secret that we've let out about Jose was we went years and years, and we had 2 vets actually look at him that, just briefly look at him. We didn't have him fully sexed either, but they were, almost, 90-some% sure that Jose was male. Jose was actually technically a female. We found out whenever he passed, we had a necropsy done on him. And the vet we were using at the time was somebody that actually went the full 9 yards and was like, your snake's actually female. But we just never changed the name. We figured he just identified as
Jose. Yeah, just identify as Jose. It's fine. Whatever Jose means.
We kept him the same way to the end. So Jose was, is an interesting case.
Yeah, I can understand that. Now, going back to last year, how you were part of our event, I know with COVID, it's been difficult. COVID came at a really rough time when you guys were trying to get started in Tennessee and trying to get things moving back up in PA. Has your involvement with us helped you in any way since then?
So actually, the funding that you guys helped provide us last year really did help us a lot. We actually went ahead, we upgraded all of our education materials. And we went into providing new housing, new enclosures for animals. We upgraded Lucy. We upgraded, I think, a couple of the snakes back home in Pennsylvania. But especially education equipment that we added on to. So right before COVID hit, actually, we had just got a new get-up for education programs so we could kind of provide, better interactive education programs for the public. So I like to say in a way that we're kind of, geared up and ready to go. It's just, COVID hit, so everything is on, standby. So, we even have, so next time we come to the furry event, for the outside portion, we even have a new canopy that we can actually put up, show off. So, just hasn't gotten any action yet this year. So
fair.
It slowed down. Volunteer-wise, we've kept the board intact. We've kept the leadership of the organization intact. Unfortunately, we haven't. One reason we're looking into doing the trash cleanups too is we haven't had a lot for volunteers themselves to do other than the ones that are fostering. So we're going to be actually checking up here on our current volunteer base, and as we're coming out of this, starting to recruit, a little more to kind of replenish, some of those numbers we may have lost during, the pandemic. But hey,
We have
so how's it going?
we have a hoofed dingo, of course, not a normal
Nice.
dingo. No, just it has to be hoofed. Why don't you have a seat over here? And let me actually do me one favor and give me 1 second. You can continue talking, but I'm going to try to change the output of the audio on this so that Dingo can hear. Actually, to help you talk. So, do you have any stories from PetSmart that were just beyond Curly Q and everything like this? And because you already said that they do a really good job, is there some specific stories you want to regale us with?
Yeah, actually. And I even have a personal Instagram too. Everybody's welcome to follow it. I I love also showing off my animals on that too. It's I think a.patrides117. I can send it to you. But I also do stories on that too with my work at the zoo and at PetSmart.
Yeah, audio went a little bit for a second. I apologize. Is it working? Oh, I know what happened. Go ahead, talk.
You
I know what
just
happened.
cut
That's
out
my fault.
completely.
So give me a second.
Okay.
Okay, so it should be back. I have a feeling that I know what happened, but I'm not sure if you're going to be able to hear, Dingo.
It's okay.
Okay. Because I think I have it routed directly through the browser, straight through a specific source. Can you hear me? No, you cannot hear me.
Yeah.
How?
I can't hear you right now. I don't know if you can hear me. Wait, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I can't hear you.
This is what I get for changing things. Can you hear me now?
You're good. Take your time. These things are bound to happen doing virtual events.
There we are. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, perfectly. There you are.
And give me a second. I figured something out. I figured out what I did wrong, and it was stupid. Because I'm using Google Meet, it was one of those things where it just didn't want to hear it. And now it's working. Now I can hear you.
Remainder of the stream donations are matched. Make sure people know.
Okay. The Dingo actually has one important thing to mention, and that is for the remainder of the stream here. So let me go back to, which is about 27 minutes. Donations that are pushed will be matched by the Dingo.
Yeah, make the dog pay.
Yeah, so there's something for you. So if we get it, so what we get in, the donations will be matched by Dingo here. Yes, yeah, it was. And no, absolutely, and we like having you around. Like that's the thing is, you're appreciating us for trying to do what we're doing for this, but we also like seeing the animals. We like seeing you take care of them. We want to support. Are you still good?
This I think it was either king snake or a milk snake out of somebody's suit.
Sorry, we lost a little bit of you there too, and I'm trying to make sure that everything's good.
Well, that's okay.
Can everybody give me a thumbs up if you can hear me and Alex? Not you. Okay, good. We're good. Okay, good. Good. Okay, good. We're all good. I'm gonna keep this out so he can maybe hear me. I'm not gonna touch it anymore because I don't know what I'm doing apparently, and I work in technology, but I can't figure out my way out of a paper bag.
Trust me, you know more than I do, so I'd be screaming for help if my audio went down just now.
No, it's fair. So you did the you actually described the PetSmart story, and I'm going to ask if you could reiterate that because we didn't have any audio during that, and I apologize for that.
Oh, that's fine. I actually, so I spend my mornings there as a pet care specialist. I help take care of some of the sick animals that we get in. So we have a vet office that's partnered with us. They're actually both exotic vet, and there's one that does cats, dogs, and furry animals too. So about the first 2 or 3 hours that I'm there every morning, I'm actually administering medications to everything from guinea pigs to hamsters to parrots, parakeets. I spent about a good hour and a half today chasing a parakeet around that got loose in our ISO room, trying to get it its medications. But
just taunting you the whole time.
Yeah, pretty much. But I've been learning a lot from that, and the employees that we have there. So our general manager at that PetSmart came in and took over. He's had rescue experience before, which really goes to show. And the guy that actually runs this, I think it's like the shift manager, is actually our fish expert there. So he's worked at the aquarium here in Tennessee, and his second job is going around servicing cichlid tanks. And he's been teaching me everything he knows about fish, which has really been an eye-opening experience. And that's when I had the conversation with him about maybe doing some kind of fish rescue thing in the future here. The other one of the specialists that works there, she also works at the zoo with me.
Nice.
So we have experts kind of all around. She's been a really valuable knowledge source, especially when it comes to medicating animals, because she also has vet tech experience too. So when it comes to dosing out certain medications or what medications to use, she's been a huge help with that. So I'm learning a lot from the 2 jobs that I picked up, and I feel really fortunate and blessed, especially during a time like this, to be able to have both those jobs plus doing TASOW, because it all benefits itself in general, and it really helped me kind of line up what my goals are for TASOW, even my personal goals, and where I want to take them as we continue to grow both here and in Pennsylvania.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine you're very busy too. It's like, thank you again, because you're probably
no worries.
You actually might be happy the fact you have the night off because you could talk instead of actually work.
What's funny? I actually the next couple weeks here going into it, I'm going to be extremely busy with not only TASOW, but the zoo is having several late night charity events that we're doing. So I actually volunteered to work for them there. What I'm doing at the zoo, by the way, how it benefits TASOW is I'm working with what's called our Ambassador Animal Program. What that is kind of like what I do with TASOW, bringing animals to the public and doing education programs with them. But the zoo that here in Chattanooga is part of an association of zoos and aquariums. It's something called the AZA, which stands for Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So zoos that are actually in that particular association have to be able to pass certain requirements, and they get inspected. So in other words, they have to be treating their animals correctly. we have to have a separation of conservation-based animals and animals that are used for programs. And then all staff is actually trained and certified at handling animals. So, for example, I've had 13 years experience working with exotics, which was what helped me to get my position in the education department at the zoo. What I don't have personally, and this is something the zoo's helping me out with, is certifications when it comes to handling, certain animals. So right now I'm part of a training program at the zoo that is training me to handle everything from small mammals up to birds of prey. And as I accomplish different, different exams, different tests, and I get different levels, as they're called, I get different certifications for that. So my goal with that is to kind of help bring that back to my own organization, to TASOW, and be able to say, hey, not only do we have a group of volunteers here that are really knowledgeable what they do, but we also have certifications to be able to handle and show and demonstrate certain animals, which is awesome because it's a load of fun.
I can only imagine it's also a benefit because you're earning your pay for doing these things. You don't have to pay for these certifications. You don't have to go through all these training rigmaroles that you have to pay for. You're just like, I'm just soaking it in, and I'm getting the benefit here.
A funny story is I actually almost got in trouble at the zoo for not getting paid to do it. So I landed in the education department, and of course, my goal there has been to work my way up, and I'm wanting to snag a keeper position there at the zoo. I'm looking for those to come up. But as I work in the education department, I guess word of mouth kind of got around the zoo about my resume, and I started, making friends with the keepers there, talking with them, because I'm kind of, I guess, in a way, grooming some of them into possible future volunteer positions for TASOW. And word got to the guy that's in charge of the Ambassador Animal Program, the keeper. His name is Zach Seymour, and he asked to meet with me one day and asked if I was interested in doing the Ambassador Animal Program. And I said, heck yeah, I definitely want to get my certifications in that. And he's like, well, when do you have time to start? I said, I can start right now. So and he was saying, like, hey, I know you have 13 years experience, but we got to start you on small mammals, work our way up. I said, that's fine. I said, if you want me to hold guinea pigs for 2 months straight till you're comfortable with me doing that, I'll hold guinea pigs for 2 months straight, Zach. That's not a problem. So I started doing that, and I was volunteering my time for it because I mean, Zach, he's the head guy there. I figured, hey, I can come in and do this on my own time. So I was coming in Tuesdays and doing that. Well, my direct supervisor contacted me and said, hey, I need to talk with you. And she was like, hey, in order to actually do the Ambassador Animal Program, you're gonna have to pass a couple online exams and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, and I'll go ahead and do those. She's like, you can't obviously come in and clock in to do this. I said, wait, I can clock in for this? I'm like, I'm not clocking in. I'm actually coming volunteer-wise. She's like, that's the problem. Like, we want to pay you for it. And I was like, okay, I mean, great. I mean, I just volunteer my time to come in for the couple hours every week that I do it, but I went ahead and went through the process, and now I guess I'm getting paid to go in on training.
You're so used to working for TASOW that you forgot that you're actually working for a job that's willing to pay you for these things.
Pretty much, and it's enjoyable for me to really be doing that, because to me I'm doing something that's going to benefit not only the animals but also hopefully people, humanity, to bring these animals close to people and
Yep.
have people gain a better understanding of them. It's just didn't really cross my mind at the time that I was like, hey, if I can come in, I'll volunteer my time to do it. You don't have to pay me, but I guess it's required that I get paid to do
Yeah,
it.
and don't turn that down. Don't ever turn that down.
No, not at all. So I said, okay. So now I go in and I clock in for 3 extra hours every week and do that.
Nice. Basically, I'm almost actually out of questions myself, so if anybody has any specific questions, please feel free to post it to the chat. I'm keeping an eye on it right now. I'm also getting eaten, or my earphone's getting eaten, so one of the two. I'm not quite sure what's going on. But yeah, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll gladly ask them. What you've already described, like what you've been able to do with the donations we did last year. I mean, moving forward, including this year and next, what would our donations be going towards? Like, how would we be helping moving forward?
For this year and next, now that I've heard, which by the way, like as soon as I told Josh about that, we're I mean, we don't know what to say. Like, thank you guys. We talked about facility. That's something we're gearing up towards more and more as we move closer. The reason I didn't really want to give out any or say that we have any specific plan for it is kind of with COVID going on, we're uncertain where things are going to go the next couple months.
What are you hoping? I should say. I understand you don't want to. Yeah.
It's going to happen. I just don't know on the time frame of it. But the fact that we are getting funding from you guys both this year and next really kind of puts us on the path where we've started having the discussion, as I call it, where we're thinking, okay, well, maybe we can start pushing toward that, facility now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what we're going to be discussing for our next couple meetings here, since we know that we'll be able to finally get back in the programs, hopefully here in 2021. And then, obviously, with you guys and everything, this will really be something that would put us to at least most of the way of where we need to be to actually, get a facility. So we've been, in the meantime, we've kind of been looking at, different areas, different properties, stuff like that, kind of coming up with a game plan. It's all just, none of it's, set in stone, so to speak. But the discussion has begun officially.
Nice. That's good to hear. And we're glad we can at least help in some form or fashion. So we're continuing to do so. I'm not getting any more questions right now. Do you have any questions for us? Because I'm pretty much through most of my questions, but are there anything that we can answer for you?
Well, actually, one of the things that I mentioned beforehand, however, that we want to continue attending the furry event with you guys after this. But we want to know if there is anything else that we can do even in the future to help you guys also after, once we've gone through, this year and of course next, as we're participating with, Western Pennsylvania Furry Weekend, we would like to see what we could do for you guys to actually help raise funds for the next organizations that are coming up to grow. Because it's something that we're really passionate about. We really want to help other people out. So if there's a way that even with like the furry event or other events that we could even bring our animals to, because they're a huge attraction, and instead of saying like, hey, donate to TASOW, be like, hey, all donations are going to Joe Schmo's fish rescue,
Yep.
Or whatever. So, but here's a snake, pet it.
Pet the snake here.
That's something that we would love to be a part of, especially as we continue it. And I know I use the word partnership a lot with a lot of organizations like the rehabs and everything, but we feel like what you guys have done for us is just so amazing that we don't just list you guys as like a partnership. Like, you guys are officially like friends of us. Like, it's a friendship.
Good.
We're more than happy to help you guys out and do anything that you guys would need us to do. So.
And we're really glad we can be that friendship. We can have that friendship with you and that partnership with you as well too, because it's good to see such dedication to a cause that is underserved. So it's wonderful to hear that. Well, if there's nothing else going, any other questions for us or anything else that we can?
Not entirely. Then I'm looking forward to seeing you guys, next year, and actually hugging some of you guys.
Absolutely.
So, where my PR coordinator, or the Pennsylvania vice chair for PR, Laura, was saying that she really is looking forward to getting back there and really, having fun. Not only having fun with you guys, but just being able to hug you guys. It's awesome. Like, we definitely missed the event and missed you guys. So it's it's just indescribable. It was last year was amazing.
That makes us feel great. I'm glad that makes everybody who works towards this feel great, to be frank, because we want it to be about the charity, we want it to be for the charity, but we also want to make it to be an environment where people can enjoy themselves, because that's important. And we're glad that you can enjoy yourself as well as everybody else.
If we can do anything to publicize you, we do have connections with news organizations. We're getting more connections down here. It's funny because one of the top stories I share whenever I'm talking about TASOW with anybody even meet down here is how the furries sponsored us. And usually the first reaction I get from people is like, the furries, the people that dress up in the suits. And then once I go through and explain it, like, wow, I didn't even know they did that, and I'm like, yeah, I mean they're amazing. They they literally put their hearts and souls into funding and sponsoring organizations that deal with animals. If there's any way that we can help advertise that to just help you guys in return do that, don't hesitate to ask, because
No,
we a lot of even in so we got connections that we can help you out with.
no, that's appreciated.
I don't know if there's a chapter of you guys down here as well. Although I am starting to make pretty good friends with the PR coordinator at our local zoo, and it might be awesome to have the local furries here. Maybe come out for an event at our local zoo. We're looking for new things to do. So
There might be. I mean, there's groups everywhere. In every city and every location, there's always groups. Now, whether or not they're organized in any fashion that it could be said to do groups like that, I don't know. But I can tell you right now that I know of a number of people who live down in Tennessee. I think I know of a few people who live near Murfreesboro.
it's close to us.
Yeah, and I think there's a few other areas that I know of, but I can't name off the top of my head, but I recognize that some of them live down there. So they're definitely there. Whether or not they can be enabled or organized to help out with any large group, I don't know. And that's something if we can try to, if we happen to know people that are down there, actually, somebody just offered they can contact the Tennessee Furry State Admins for the chats down there. Somebody knows them, so
Perfect.
actually maybe we can get back to you on that. That can help. That maybe be able to help you guys out down there too. So
Excellent.
can't complain about that.
Not at all. I mean, hey, that's awesome seeing growth in both avenues.
How far is Chattanooga from Atlanta?
Only 2 hours north of us. So more like, if you go to technical terms, like it's like an hour and 57 minutes or something like that. I'm roughly equidistance from Nashville as well. So
Wow.
I think I've driven to almost every place now, so I have like the hours kind of memorized. So like we're literally in between Atlanta and Nashville, and then to get up to Pittsburgh, it's about 8.5, 9 hours.
I didn't realize you were that far. Like it doesn't occur to me.
Honestly, I drive so much now that it just blows right by. Like I'll last time I was in PA a couple weeks ago, because I finally got clearance to go visit friends and family, and I made the drive up there. It said it took me about 9.5 hours, I think, to get to Slippery Rock.
Yep.
But I wake up early in the morning and I kind of just drive straight through. I make one stop, and then it's coming down is actually really easy now that I have those friends and volunteers that are in West Virginia,
Yep.
because I just 3 hours driving from Pennsylvania to there, and then I usually have a place to stay that I can crash overnight.
That's not so bad. Yeah.
It cuts the trip down by like 3 hours.
Yeah,
so
that's
like
a
7
better.
hours.
That's a much better situation. Yeah.
It's a beautiful drive, though. I mean,
yeah.
it's so there's between the Blue Ridge Mountains and going
yes.
through the Smoky Mountains and then West Virginia. It's you're just kind of enamored by the natural beauty that's out there. So the hours just kind of fly by.
Yeah, West Virginia is. I love driving through West Virginia when I had the chance to do it. It's a beautiful state.
Even before we met you guys, we actually had a goal that once we get the chapter established here, we wanted to make some kind of yearly event that we could have like both chapters kind of meet up. And I'm thinking, for the furry event, especially for that week, eventually, future goals down here, maybe TASOW can get a vehicle here that we can load everybody up in for the furry weekend, and have the Tennessee chapter come up and visit, Pennsylvania,
Great.
and, get everybody together.
Now, and if you have a specific event, I'm sure some of us would be wanting to do so. So please let us know.
Absolutely. I think you guys share the same interests as like a lot of us do, but we love beer garden events.
Oh yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you guys out for that? I mean, that's a big thing. We're actually getting a lot of, I'd say a lot of our events. We're still doing obviously education programs at the schools and stuff, but the beer garden events are getting popularity. And I actually have a friend in Grove City, Pennsylvania, who owns his own distillery up there. It's called MLH. And they're brand new as of like the last 2 years. They've been doing some amazing distilling, and he actually gave TASOW proposition that we're going to do an event up there where we kind of have like a beer and liquor garden set up, and like the reptiles, there. Of course, have a band and everything. So that's another event that is actually planned here for the future that would be open to the
Great.
public. So I'd love to even talk
Maybe.
about maybe have you guys. It's always a great time.
I guarantee that people would be interested in that, especially to get finally to a place that is hopefully with COVID tamped down and people can go out again. That's a huge thing that people are wanting to do. So yeah, I can guarantee you people would be interested. And you were asking like what you can do for us. Honestly, in a lot of ways, just by basically giving us positive PR, because people don't realize what we do. Like all these groups in all these states and all these locales, almost every one of these bigger events is charity driven. There's a reason for it. There's a charity that it's for. I mean, there's the goal behind it to bring people together and to have these gatherings, but the end big thing is the charity drive in a lot of these cases. So that positive PR is actually really great because it helps people understand more, because we aren't seen, we're seen by the people, by most people as like, what are those weirdos doing? So it's good to get some positive feedback from that perspective. So very much appreciated that. So you're already doing it for us.
Yeah. Hey, I'm as weird as they come. So
Exactly.
I have no problem advocating. Weirdness is the new normal. So.
Yeah, it's a very common thing, and everybody's weird who's willing to be weird. It's just a matter, are you willing to be weird? So there you go. And we're willing to be weird, and people are confused by that.
I work with strange animals, man.
Exactly. Anyways, we're at 8:55. And in about 3 minutes, we're going to see Quuxum's finale with your peppers. Quuxum's peppers. My brain just shut off in terms of what we were actually going to be looking at. So Quuxum's peppers, he's going to be ready in... man, my brain is not working today.
Trust me.
The peppers are going to be ready to go. Quuxum is going to be able to talk about it. And she's almost ready in a minute or two. I got through this whole thing without making a big flub of myself, and then I got to that point. That's fine. I did. I'm happy about it. So,
I think this event for all success. Like it was great to have this kind of especially with such a positive outlook on it. I didn't get a chance to look at the screen and see how many people actually logged in there, but I really did appreciate the questions and the attendance. Like, it was awesome to be able to answer you guys' questions and just talk with y'all.
No, thank you very, very much for your time, and thank you very much for doing what you're doing for those animals. And again, until we have a few more minutes, matching donations. So anybody who is donating is getting matching donations by Mr. Dingo here. So please, if you want to donate, now's a good time to do so. And thank you, Alex. And
Thank you, Mr. Dingo.
Thank you, Mr. Dingo. And I hope you get some sleep, because you've needed some sleep, considering you said you only had a few hours. So
I will be getting. I promise I will be getting my sleep tomorrow night, because I do have part of a day off on Monday. I can sleep in all I want on Monday for once, which is great. I did promise Louie that we haven't been out in a while, and there is like a social distancing kind of axe throwing thing going on.
Yeah.
We decided we're gonna go do that because we haven't, we need to do something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sometimes we do.
But yeah, so I just lost my train of thought.
No, see, 2 hours talking at each other, it's kind of hard. Lucy's kind of done. Yeah. Lucy's like, no, I'm getting done.
4-year-old now.
Yeah.
Or 7-year-old, sorry.
Close enough.
Had you for 4. No.
But no, thank you again, and have a good rest of your night, and we'll be sure to let you know exactly what we come up with, because we won't know the final number probably until Monday or Tuesday, because the merchandise sales trails a day. But we'll have a tentative number, and we'll let you know tomorrow by the evening. So,
on behalf of TASOW, the board, and also all the leadership, every volunteer, and the animals too, we sincerely thank you guys, and we look forward 100% to living it up with you guys next year here in 2021. I already have my that first weekend of October marked off. Once I get the official date of the 2021 event, I will I'll block out that day or that weekend, and I'll be there. Yeah, you'll
Thank
see
you.
me.
Good. All right. Well, have a good rest of your night and take care of yourself. Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye.